Astra 9 was a quiet research station floating above a pale blue planet. From a distance it looked peaceful, like a silver ring suspended in the sky. But inside the station, the halls were full of noise, lights, and constant activity from many species working together. Humans, robots, and alien races walked side by side. Only one person felt alone in all of it, an alien girl named Corel. Corel was a young member of the Scenari, a race known for one special ability. They were all connected to each other through a mental network called the Hive Link. Through this link, the Scenari could share thoughts, feelings, and ideas without speaking a single word. This link made their society strong and efficient. Decisions were made quickly, and no Scenari ever felt lonely. No one except Corel. Corel had been born different. While other Scenari children connected to the Hive Link at a young age, she never could. Her mind stayed quiet. She heard nothing from her people, and they heard nothing from her. For the Scenari, this was a serious defect. Anyone who could not join the link was considered weaker, slower, and unfit for important tasks. So, at the age when most Scenari children began advanced studies, Corel was taken out of the main learning group. She was moved to a small, lonely observation room on Astra 9. Her new job was simple: watch environmental monitors, record changes in temperature, pressure, and light levels, and send reports. It was work no one else wanted to do. To her people, it was the only job someone defective could handle. But Corel did not complain. She had grown used to silence. She had grown used to being alone. Every day she sat at her observation desk, surrounded by blinking screens. She wore a soft gray uniform with a small Scenari badge. Her skin had a faint lavender glow, and her eyes were a bright silver, like polished metal. She looked calm on the outside, but inside she often wondered why she was different, why her mind stayed empty when everyone else's minds were full. The hours passed slowly in her quiet room. Sometimes she hummed to herself, making little melodies to fill the silence. Sometimes she watched the planet below and pretended she could fly down to its surface. Sometimes she imagined conversations with people who might want to speak to her. But no one ever came. That changed on the day the human engineering team arrived. The humans walked through Astra 9 with curious eyes. They had come to update old machinery, install new power lines, and improve the station's energy systems. Among them was Ethan Ward, a 32-year-old engineer with dark hair, a friendly face, and a habit of noticing things other people ignored. He was known for asking questions, exploring strange corners of research stations, and learning about every species he met. Ethan had heard that the Scenari were brilliant scientists connected through a mind network, and he was excited to see how they worked. But as he walked through the station, something unusual caught his attention. A small doorway at the end of a silent hallway. There was a sign above it that read, "Observation Room 7 Low Priority Personnel." Most people would have walked past the door without a second thought. But Ethan paused. The hallway was too quiet, too empty. It felt like someone had been placed there and forgotten. He knocked lightly on the door. There was no answer. After a moment, he stepped inside. Corel looked up with surprise. She had never seen a human this close before. Humans visited the station sometimes, but they rarely entered the low-priority sectors. Ethan smiled politely. Hello. Sorry if I'm disturbing you. I'm Ethan Ward, from the engineering team. I'm checking these rooms to see if the power lines need upgrades." Corel blinked slowly. She wasn't used to being spoken to directly. "Hello," she said in a soft voice. "I am Corel of the Scenari. This room's systems are functioning normally." Her speech sounded formal, almost rehearsed, because she rarely spoke out loud. Most Scenari talked with their minds, so Corel had learned spoken language only from recordings. Ethan looked around the small room, too small, too empty. It didn't look like a place meant for real scientific work. It looked more like a storage closet turned into a prison. "What do you do here?" he asked gently. Corel turned back to her screen. "I monitor environmental readings. It is a necessary task. Ethan had already seen the same readings displayed in 5 other rooms nearby, all automated. But these systems can run themselves, he thought. Why place someone here? He studied Corel for a moment. She didn't make eye contact for long. Her shoulders were slightly hunched, like she had spent years trying to appear small. Then he noticed something else. Her badge didn't have a rank, only a symbol he didn't recognize. What does that mark mean? He asked. Corel hesitated. Her fingers tightened. It means I am not connected to the Hive link. I was declared defective. Ethan froze. He had heard that the Scenari were united by a mental network, but he never imagined what would happen to someone who couldn't join it. I'm sorry, he said softly. That doesn't sound fair. Corel shook her head quickly. It is the normal way. I cannot join the link, so I cannot participate in higher Scenari work. This is the role assigned to me. But you speak, you think, you work, Ethan said. How can they call you defective? Corel lowered her voice until it was barely a whisper. Because I am alone. The words struck Ethan with a strange sadness. He realized she wasn't just lonely, she had been trained to believe she deserved to be. He stepped closer to her desk. Can I ask you something? He said. Do you like observing these readings? Corel looked at the screens. I do not dislike them. That isn't the same as liking them, Ethan said. She looked confused for a moment. Scenari did not often talk about personal preferences. With a Hive link, the group made choices together. Individual opinions did not matter. I do not know what I like, she admitted. That made Ethan's heart twist. A person should know what they like. A person should have choices. Would you mind if I came back later? He asked. Maybe I can show you something. Something human. Corel stared at him as though he had spoken an impossible idea. Why would you do that? Ethan shrugged. Because you seem interesting. And because no one deserves to be alone all the time. For a long moment, Corel said nothing. She tried to understand his words, but her mind kept circling around one thought. A human found her interesting. Not defective. Not useless. Interesting. You may come back, she said quietly. If that is what you want. Ethan gave her a warm smile. I'll see you soon, Corel. He left the room, but Corel sat frozen long after the door closed. Her heart was beating too fast. She didn't know what had just happened, but she felt lighter. That day, for the first time in her life, someone had spoken to her like she mattered. Later, as Corel sat alone again, she looked at a small, blinking light on her console. It was a minor energy fluctuation, not dangerous, but unusual. She wrote it in her report carefully, though she knew no one would read it closely. But something about the pattern felt strange. Like it didn't belong. She stared at it longer than she needed to. And somewhere deep inside her mind, where no Scenari thoughts reached, something quietly awakened. A sense that she was seeing something important. Something only she could notice. And she wondered, for the first time in her life, if being defective might not mean being broken, but simply being different. And maybe different could matter. The next morning, Corel returned to her small observation room with a strange mixture of curiosity and caution. She was not sure what to expect from the human, Ethan Ward, but part of her hoped he would come again. Her life had been so quiet for so long that even small changes felt enormous. True to his word, Ethan appeared before she had finished her morning report. He carried a small tablet and a backpack filled with tools, wires, and blinking devices that looked more complicated than anything Corel had ever seen. Good morning, Corel, he said cheerfully. Do you mind if I join you for a bit? Corel hesitated. No human had ever spoken to her directly more than once. Most humans in the station either ignored her or seemed confused by her quiet, alone existence. But there was something in Ethan's voice that made her nod. I do not mind, she said softly. Ethan placed his tablet on her desk and tapped a few buttons. A holographic display rose from it, showing a small section of the station's environmental readings, animated with colored lights and shifting graphs. I noticed you pay close attention to these readings, Ethan said, but there's something humans do differently. We look for patterns that may not match the normal rules. Sometimes, What looks like an error can be important. Krill tilted her head. She had never thought of mistakes as important. To the Sonari, a mistake was just a failure, another reason to call someone defective. But Ethan's words stirred something in her mind. Patterns that do not match? She asked. Yes, he said. For example, this line here. He pointed to a thin red line moving in a small zigzag. It seems small, almost invisible, but it repeats at exact intervals. A normal Sonari might overlook it because it does not match the hive link predictions, but someone who thinks differently might see it. Krell studied the red line. Something clicked. Her mind, trained to work independently, noticed the tiny irregularity almost instinctively. It repeats every 32 seconds, she said. I see it now. Ethan's eyes lit up. Exactly. You see what I mean? Most Sonari would never notice that. They rely entirely on the hive. But you notice details on your own. Krill's silver eyes widened. No one had ever told her that noticing something differently could be valuable. She had spent years being told she was defective. You think this is good? She asked cautiously. Very good, Ethan said. It means your mind works in ways others can't. That's not a defect. That's unique. Krell wanted to believe him, but it was difficult. Her people's voices echoed in her memory. Defective. Useless. Slow. They were always right, or so she had been told. Ethan noticed the hesitation in her expression. It will take time, he said gently. But you can learn to trust yourself. He spent the morning showing her simple human logic exercises. Not tests, but challenges. He asked her to spot patterns in energy flows, to find weak points in a structural grid, and to suggest ways to optimize system outputs. At first, Krell was unsure. She had never been asked to think freely before. The hive always told Sonari what to do, what was correct, but something inside her began to stir. Slowly, she realized she could make decisions without fear of being wrong. When she suggested a small adjustment to an energy conduit, the human smiled. You see? He said. Your ideas matter. You can solve problems in ways no one else can. Also, for the first time, Krell felt a spark of pride. She had always been invisible, a shadow of her peers. But now, her thoughts, her observations, her ideas, they had value. The day passed quickly. Ethan encouraged Krell to write down everything she noticed, even the smallest details. He said humans often discovered breakthroughs by studying the overlooked. By the afternoon, the station's supervisors noticed their absence. A senior Sonari officer, Lyran, arrived at the observation room with a sharp expression. Krell, why are you assisting this human? She demanded. Krell's hands froze over her keyboard. She had never spoken to a superior this way. I am learning new methods, she said carefully. The officer's eyes narrowed. You are not connected to the hive. You have no authority to experiment. Step aside and return to your assigned tasks. Ethan stepped in front of her, his hand raised in a peaceful gesture. With all respect, Lyran, Krell noticed something unusual that no one else saw. Her observation could be critical. I suggest you allow her to continue for now. The officer's gaze hardened. But after a long moment, she nodded reluctantly. Very well, she said. But I am watching. Any failure, and it will be your fault, Krell. Krell felt a chill run down her spine, but for the first time, fear did not paralyze her. She glanced at Ethan. He smiled encouragingly, as if to say, You are not alone. The next few days were a blur of discovery. Krell began noticing patterns in data that no other Sonari had considered. She observed temperature fluctuations caused by minor power imbalances. She traced tiny vibrations in the station's hull to mechanical misalignments. She even noticed a strange interference in the station's communications, a faint signal that repeated irregularly. Whenever she mentioned these patterns to her people, they dismissed them. But Ethan listened carefully, always asking questions, always encouraging her. One evening, after hours of monitoring, Corell pointed to the communication readings. "I do not know what this is," she admitted. "It is faint, but it repeats. It does not match any known system." Ethan leaned closer, his brow furrowed. "Interesting. Most people would ignore it because it seems unimportant. But I think you're onto something. Let's see what it could mean." Together, they mapped the signal, tracked its source, and compared it with station logs. Krell noticed subtle patterns Ethan would have missed on his own. The human was amazed. "You have an instinct for these things," he said. "You notice details that others overlook. This could be extremely useful." Krell looked at the display, feeling something new inside her. Pride. Excitement. A sense of purpose she had never known. For the first time, she was not defined by what she could not do. She was defined by what she could do. At the same time, she began learning about humans. Ethan taught her not only logic and problem-solving, but also their ways of thinking. Curious, flexible, sometimes chaotic, but always adaptive. Krell marveled at how humans could act without a central network. Each human mind was independent, yet capable of great teamwork. "It is different from the hive," she said one night, after a long day of study. "Your minds do not connect like ours, yet you accomplish so much." Ethan nodded. "We rely on each person's individuality. Mistakes happen, but they often lead to discovery. Sometimes being different is our greatest strength." Krell reflected on the words. They reminded her of herself. She had always been different. And now, with Ethan's guidance, she could see that being different was not a weakness, but there was still a worry. The strange signal she had noticed continued to pulse through the station. It was faint, almost invisible, but it persisted. She could not explain it, and she was unsure whether anyone else would even notice it. Ethan noticed her hesitation. "I see something strange," she said quietly. "A repeating signal. I do not know its purpose." Ethan's eyes lit up. "Then we'll figure it out together. That's what humans do. We explore, test, and discover. And sometimes, the solution comes from someone no one expected." Krell nodded. For the first time, she felt ready. She was not just the defective Sonari. She was something new. Something different. Something that could make a difference. As the evening faded into night, Krell stayed at her console, watching the signal pulse across the screens. She felt alive in a way she had never felt before. It was the first spark of hope, the first taste of purpose. For weeks, she had lived in silence. She had thought that being different meant being weak, alone, and useless. But now, with Ethan's guidance, she began to understand a simple truth. Being different could be powerful. And being seen mattered. And in the quiet room on Astra 9, with only blinking screens and a patient human by her side, Corell began to imagine a world where she was not just surviving, but thriving. Astra 9 had never been completely quiet, but that day the station's hum turned into an uneasy vibration. Corell noticed it first, while reviewing the environmental readings. The faint signal she had been tracking for weeks, the one no one else cared about, had grown stronger. It pulsed in sharp, irregular bursts, bouncing across multiple systems. At first, the Sonari scientists dismissed it. "It is likely a minor interference in the communication lines," said one. Nothing worth concern. But Krell's instincts told her otherwise. The signal was not random. It repeated in a pattern too complex for normal station noise. Too deliberate to be ignored. She tapped her console nervously. "This is unusual," she whispered to herself. Ethan noticed her tension. "What is it?" he asked, moving closer. "It is the signal I have been observing," Krell said. "It has changed. It is stronger now, and affecting multiple systems. If it continues, the station may fail." Ethan frowned. "Show me." He leaned over the console, eyes scanning the pulsing lines. I see it. Interesting. But what exactly does it do? Corel shook her head. I do not know. It interferes with the automated systems. It seems to avoid human and independent observations. But it may disrupt the Sonari hive calculations. I cannot be sure. Ethan's brow furrowed. If it disrupts the hive, the station could lose control of its power grids, life support, everything. That is serious. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed, and the hum of machinery turned into high-pitched whines. A power surge raced through the main conduits. The Sonari scientists rushed to the control panels, their minds linking instantly through the hive. Do you see this? One of them shouted. This is the anomaly. We must correct it immediately. They tried to coordinate a response through the hive link, but Corel noticed something strange. The hive's synchronized efforts ignored the irregularities in the anomaly. Their shared thoughts smoothed over the problem, masking subtle changes that only an independent mind could detect. They cannot see it, Corel said to Ethan, her voice tense. Ethan glanced at her. Then, it's up to you. Corel swallowed hard. Fear crept into her chest. She had never led anyone before. She had only followed orders or quietly watched screens, but now, she realized something she had never thought possible. Her mind worked differently, and that difference could save lives. She pointed to the rising pulses. The hive link cannot perceive the irregular pattern. Only an independent observer, someone outside the hive, can notice the precise rhythm. If this continues, it will destabilize the main power conduit. Ethan nodded. Good. Then let's act fast. What do we need to do? Corel took a deep breath and focused. Her mind worked carefully, ignoring the hive's constant chatter around her. She traced the anomaly, mapping each pulse, its source, and the way it moved through the systems. Step by step, she constructed a plan, a sequence of adjustments that could absorb the pulses and stabilize the conduits. Ethan watched, impressed. You're doing amazing, he said. Tell me what to do, and I'll follow exactly. Together, they began their work. Corel guided Ethan as he adjusted circuit relays, rerouted power flows, and deployed stabilizing programs. Every step had to be precise. One wrong move, and the surge could spread uncontrollably. The Sonari scientists noticed their interference. Stop them! One shouted. You are risking the station. You are not linked to the hive. Corel ignored them. She could feel the pulse of the anomaly in her mind, its rhythm like a heartbeat out of sync. Only by trusting her own instincts could she guide Ethan. Minutes passed like hours. Sweat ran down Ethan's brow as he tapped commands. Corel's fingers flew across her console, tracking every fluctuation. Suddenly, a massive surge hit the main conduit. Sparks flew from nearby panels, and the room shook violently. Corel's silver eyes widened, but she stayed focused. Redirect the auxiliary flow to the secondary grid. Now, she commanded. Ethan followed her instructions instantly. The auxiliary conduits glowed as energy rerouted, and the pulsing surge slowed, then stabilized. Red alarms turned yellow, then green. The station's hum returned to normal. The Sonari scientists froze. For the first time, they realized what had happened. The station had been saved not by the hive, not by collective intelligence, but by someone they had called defective. One of the senior Sonari, Lyran, stepped forward. Her expression was unreadable. She looked at Corel, and then at Ethan. It seems this outcome was only possible because of her independent observation, she said slowly. No hive link could have seen this pattern in time. Corel's heart pounded. She had done it. She had saved the station, saved lives, saved her people. Ethan smiled at her. You see? Your mind is powerful. Your difference is a strength, not a weakness. For the first time, Corel understood. Being disconnected from the hive link had made her unique. It had given her perspective no one else could have. The station stabilized completely. Engineers checked all systems, confirming that no damage remained. The Sonari leadership held an emergency meeting to review the incident. Krell was called to the council chamber. Her legs felt weak, but she stood tall, remembering Ethan's encouraging words. "State your findings," Lyran commanded. Krell took a deep breath. The anomaly was a repeating signal of unknown origin. It bypassed hive-linked calculations and caused a chain reaction in the main power conduits. Because I am independent of the hive, I could perceive the irregular pattern and guide corrective action. A murmur spread among the council. Several Sonari elders glanced at one another. Their hive-link minds had never considered the value of an independent observer. "Your actions prevented a critical failure," Lyran said after a long pause. "This is unprecedented. You have demonstrated the usefulness of someone who operates outside the hive." Krell felt a mixture of pride and relief. She had always believed herself defective, useless, invisible. But now, for the first time, she realized she was necessary. She had a purpose. Ethan stepped beside her. "You did it," he said softly. "I always knew you could." Krell looked at him and felt a warmth she had never known. Someone had believed in her. Someone had seen her value. The council continued to discuss the implications of the crisis. They decided that Krell would be allowed to continue working in an independent role, observing systems and anomalies beyond the hive's perception. It was not a formal title yet, but it was a start, a recognition of her abilities. Later, alone in the observation room, Krell stared at the screens. The pulse of the anomaly was gone. The station was safe. Yet she felt something more than relief. She felt purpose. Ethan joined her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You know," he said, "this is only the beginning. There are so many patterns, so many signals, so many problems, that only someone like you can notice." Krell nodded slowly. I want to learn. I want to understand." And I'll help," Ethan said. "We'll figure them out together." For the first time in her life, Krell did not feel defective. She did not feel weak. She felt alive. She felt capable. She felt human, in a way, even though she was Sonari. That night, as the lights of Astra 9 dimmed for a short cycle of rest, Krell remained at her console, studying patterns, tracking anomalies, and imagining possibilities. She realized that being different, being independent, being outside the hive link, was a gift. Her mind, once thought useless, had saved the station. And perhaps one day, it could save more than that. Maybe entire colonies. Maybe even worlds. She smiled faintly, watching the stars through the observation window. For the first time, Krell understood that purpose is not given by others. It is discovered. Sometimes with help, sometimes alone. And in her heart, she knew she had discovered hers. The aftermath of the crisis on Astra 9 brought an unusual calm. The station hummed steadily, lights flickered only briefly, and the gentle vibration of machinery filled the halls like a comforting heartbeat. The Sonari, who had spent years relying entirely on the hive link, were still adjusting to the realization that someone outside the network, someone previously labeled defective, had saved their station. Krell sat at her console, watching the blinking lights and reviewing the environmental logs one more time. Even though the immediate danger had passed, she knew the signal anomaly was only one of many possible challenges the station could face. And now, she felt ready to face them not as a defective Sonari, but as someone with unique abilities. Ethan entered the observation room, carrying his tablet. He looked tired but happy. "Morning, Krell," he said, smiling. "The council wants to speak with you today. They'll officially recognize what you did." Krell nodded slowly. Recognition was not something she had ever expected. To the Sonari, she had always been a failure. She remembered the cold words, the dismissive looks, and the silence that had followed her every step. But now everything was different. As she walked toward the council chamber, she noticed whispers in the hallway. Some Sonari elders looked at her with curiosity, others with suspicion. No one spoke, but she could feel the weight of their attention. For the first time, she did not shrink under it. She held her head high, her silver eyes reflecting determination rather than fear. Inside the chamber, the council waited. Lyran, the senior officer who had first dismissed her, sat in the center. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a faint flicker of respect in her eyes. Krell, Lyran began, her voice formal, you have demonstrated actions that no member of the Hive Link could perform. The station's stability depended on your independent observation and quick decision-making. You have saved lives and prevented catastrophic failure. For this, we acknowledge your contribution. Krell felt a warmth in her chest. The words were official, formal, and yet personal. They were saying aloud what she had only just begun to realize herself. She was not defective. Thank you, Krell said quietly, her voice steady. More than thanks, Lyran continued. You will be given a new role. You will operate as an independent research specialist. Your work will focus on areas outside Hive Link perception, where your unique abilities can contribute the most. A murmur spread through the chamber. Some Sonari nodded in approval, while others seemed unsure. For centuries, no one had worked outside the Hive Link. The idea of independence was strange, almost threatening, but the proof was undeniable. Krell had saved the station. Ethan, who had accompanied her, smiled proudly. Congratulations, he whispered. Krell looked at him, and for the first time, she smiled back. She had never imagined this outcome. She had spent so long believing that her difference was a weakness, but now she understood that difference was her strength. After the ceremony, Krell returned to her observation room. She sat at her console, staring at the blinking screens. The anomaly that had caused so much chaos was gone, but the lessons remained. She realized that purpose was not something given by others, it was discovered. And sometimes, it required someone to see your potential when no one else would. Ethan leaned against the doorway. So, what now? He asked. Krell thought for a moment. Now, I continue my work. I observe. I analyze. And I find patterns that the Hive cannot perceive. And I learn. Ethan nodded. Good. And maybe I can help too? Of course, Krell said. I could not have done any of this without you. He laughed softly. Well, then we make a good team. Humans and Sonari. Independent and together. Over the next few weeks, Krell settled into her new role. She worked closely with both the human engineers and Sonari scientists, forming a bridge between two very different ways of thinking. Where the Hive Link operated with perfect synchronization, Krell brought flexibility, intuition, and creativity. Where humans relied on trial and error, she contributed precise observation and logical reasoning. Her days were no longer lonely. Colleagues sought her insight, and even the Sonari who had once ignored her began asking questions. Krell realized that her difference had value in ways no one had imagined. She was not just surviving, she was shaping the future. One afternoon, as she examined the energy fluctuations of the station, Ethan approached with a tablet full of new data from the planetary surface below. Look at this, he said. There are patterns here that could affect the station's orbit. Most of the data is chaotic, but I think you might see something in it. Krell studied the readings carefully. Her eyes scanned every spike, every dip, every irregular signal. Slowly, she traced a sequence that predicted a minor orbital shift that could have caused issues in the station's stabilization thrusters. I see it, Krell said softly. It is subtle, but consistent. If we adjust the thrusters slightly, we can prevent problems before they occur. Ethan smiled. Exactly. This is why we need your kind of mind, different, independent, observant. For Krell, the feeling of being useful was intoxicating. She remembered the long months of silence, the labels of defective, and the loneliness that had been her constant companion. And now, she realized those experiences had prepared her for this moment. Her difference was not a weakness, it was her power. Days turned into weeks, and Krell's reputation grew. Humans and Sonari alike came to rely on her insights. She was invited to contribute to research projects that spanned multiple planets. Her unique perspective allowed her to see connections others could not, anticipate problems, and propose solutions. One evening, after a long cycle of work, Krell stood at the observation window of Astra 9. The pale blue planet beneath them shimmered in the station's light. Stars stretched endlessly across the black sky, each one a distant possibility. For the first time, she did not feel small. She felt capable. She felt needed. She felt alive. Ethan joined her quietly. "Thinking about the future?" he asked. Krell nodded. "Yes. I am thinking about what I can do. There is so much to discover. So many patterns to understand. I want to help not just here, but everywhere I can." "You will," Ethan said confidently. "And I'll be there to help you. But remember, this is just the beginning. Your path is yours to choose." Krell smiled. She realized that choosing her own path was more important than any recognition or title. The independent research specialist role was a start. But her true purpose was more than that. It was the freedom to observe, to think, to create, and to make a difference in ways no one else could. Weeks later, the Sonari Council invited her to speak at a conference on interstellar research. Krell stood before the assembly of scientists, humans, and Sonari leaders. Her silver eyes met theirs confidently. "I was once called defective," she began. "I was told I could not contribute, that I was not capable of important work. But I discovered something. Difference is not a weakness. Independence is not failure. It is a gift. And when given the chance, even those who seem small, invisible, or powerless can make a great difference." The room fell silent. Then, one by one, the Sonari and human scientists began to applaud. Krell felt a surge of pride and joy. She had never imagined standing here, speaking openly, and being celebrated for her abilities. After the conference, she returned to Astra 9 with Ethan. Together, they continued their work, exploring anomalies, observing patterns, and solving problems that no one else could. Krell knew now that purpose was not something assigned by others. It was something discovered, nurtured, and embraced. And with her unique mind, her independence, and the support of someone who believed in her, she could achieve more than she had ever dreamed. As she stood at her console, gazing at the stars once again, Krell felt a sense of peace. She had been declared defective, dismissed, and overlooked, but those experiences had led her to find her true strength. Her silver eyes reflected the light of countless distant stars, each one a promise of possibility. She had discovered that being different was a gift, that independent thought could save lives, and that helping others and being helped could reveal a greater purpose. And in that moment, Krell smiled, knowing that her journey was only beginning. She had a purpose now. A path she had chosen. A role no one else could fill, and she was ready to explore it, one discovery at a time.